Almost everyone agrees that education is both important and necessary. But what precisely is the purpose of school? Is it to develop a mind capable of critical thought and reasoning? Or to reinforce the passage of shared values and beliefs from one generation to another? Is it to encourage exploring and developing an understanding of the world around you? Or to prepare future laborers for the workforce? Is it to lift up all students equally regardless of ability? Or to cultivate children with exceptional promise to be future leaders in their fields? It all depends on who you ask. But if you ask parents who homeschool, they'll tell you they've figured out how to do all of this and more at once. My name's Josh Borman.
I'm June Sternbach.
And this is Ill Conceived, a podcast about natalism. Well, happy government shutdown day, June.
I know. I was hoping for it. I was looking forward to it. Like,
were you?
I've gotten to a point where the world is getting so just like bad. I feel like it's undeniable. Things are getting bad, and I'm just sort of in for the long haul for just wanting bad things to happen.
Right.
Like, objectively speaking, the government shutting down is maybe not the best thing. I mean, there's a lot of workers.
It's bad. It's a bad thing.
A lot of workers don't get their pay, but the upside, ICE agents are not getting pay right now, and they're still being forced to work. So all of this to say is, I want the ICE agents to be miserable. I want all of these people enacting violence in all these cities, Chicago, Portland, everywhere, to just feel their morale drip away.
Yeah.
How have you been celebrating?
I haven't really. I'm of the opinion that it's generally bad when people can't get services that they need from the government.
Right.
But when the government is pivoting to also being fully in the business of abject oppression of everyone, I don't really know. I don't like living in unprecedented times, if I'm being honest.
I know. We got to stop that. We need to go back to when nothing ever happened. You know, that little nothing ever happened guy. He's been dead. We buried the nothing ever happened guy in the ground a while ago at this point.
And we replaced him with a Labubu.
Yeah.
That's the other thing. I've got a Labubu now.
Yeah, Josh has been infected. He has a Labubu looking straight at me on camera right now. It's very unsettling. I don't feel comfortable. Pazuzu's energy is grabbing me as we speak. I'm very nervous.
This is sort of the latest development in my life was I felt compelled. And I feel like this also means that now the bubble is about to burst. Like, if we've gotten to the point where I am buying the novelty toy, right? The fad gadget, it's fair to say that it's going to fall apart. That house of cards is about to collapse, I think.
That will drop, and it's like, that was the final recession indicator. And then the U.S., the world will enter like a global recession, but only because the Labubu market fell apart.
Yes, exactly. It's like the Labubu market falling apart is going to be the domino that somehow leads to like Nvidia's collapse, which of course, once Nvidia tanks, it's going to take the entire global economy with it. So
it's holding up everything right now. But underneath that, it's Labubu.
That's right. Yeah. All of these Labubus actually rendered with Nvidia GPUs, it turns out. That's the thing that they won't tell you.
And that's why Nvidia is popping off right now. Still,
right.
Somehow,
in spite of everything.
Yeah.
Other than that, though, how you been?
So I don't talk about it a lot on this show, if at all. But I work at The Onion, as you know, as a lot of listeners probably know. But we are releasing, I guess when people will be listening to this episode, the showing will have been the night before. So this Thursday, which will be a day in the past for when this episode releases.
You missed it. Sorry.
Yeah, sorry. But we're doing a lot of showings across the country. I'm very excited about that. Myself and a lot of different Onion employees are going to be going to the same showing. So it's just going to be, I've been looking forward to this for a little bit to show the world this amazing thing that the Onion put together. So I've been giddy. I've been very excited this week.
That's great. I feel like I need to come up with something to look forward to, and I don't have one of those yet. So I don't know.
For me, a lot of things I've been looking forward to lately is just work, like things I work on or have a hand in working at or with or associated with that I find fun. Well, so work has been holding me up, and I include I don't. This show isn't work per se, but
It's work.
Kind of is. It is.
It's work. We put a lot of fucking work into this show.
We do a lot of research, and
there's a lot of shows where folks just hop on the mic and say whatever, but I think I probably spent at least 10 hours putting the outline together for today's episode. Yeah. And so I guess that's something I've been looking forward to is talking to you about homeschooling.
Oh my God. This is always a topic that I've had very strong opinions on, and I know I'm right about them. And I'm really excited to finally get all of the data that you combined here collected that we'll be going over today, because it will just, I think I'll be able to argue my stance a lot better after this.
Great. Well, before we get into that, we might as well dig into the mailbag as we do every week.
The famous mailbag.
The famous mailbag. And we've got this fantastic email here from Starlene, who says, "Hello, June and Josh. God damn it. Fuck." That's one in your column, June.
There we go.
You've done it again.
On the board.
Putting a tally on the left.
That's right. Yep.
I was listening to the Quiverful episode, and the striking thing to me was the discussion of how societally we used to have a lot more kids because of the unspoken expectation that not all of them would live to adulthood. Combine that with the spoken expectation in the Quiverful movement that you won't have time to give your full attention to any of your kids and develop fully formed, healthy family relationships, and I wonder if there isn't a similar expectation that not all kids will make it. Make it there being in quotes. Hyper-religious communities and cults are very aware of doubters and deserters, and so probably do view leaving as an unspoken inevitability. If the goal is to keep making babies for the religion or racial purity or whatever, then surely part of the belief is a numbers game. The objective is to have kids who follow the cause. But if a certain percent are likely to leave the faith, then statistically speaking, you have to just keep making children if you want to guarantee birthing at least one or two true believers. And if that is the case, then it kind of turns Quiverful and other natalist movements into a super fucked up gotcha game. Thank you for your reading. I'm curious to hear your thoughts. Thank you so much for that email, Starlene.
That's a point I didn't even consider, is that they probably do know. And this is something I feel like I've been seeing a lot more in right-wing spaces. I'm sure you have, Josh, and maybe a lot of listeners. When people on the right talk about having children, talk about what they're talking about is natalism, having a lot of children. They always frame it like they're owning the left. They're like, we're going to outbreed the left. We're going to have more children than the left. We're going to outnumber them. And on the base level, you're probably having the correct thought that your political ideology is not endemic to your DNA. It is not genetics. Right. But they probably are thinking, like, if I have 10 kids, at least 8 of those, if I raise them the way I want to raise them, at least 8 will be those conservative, maybe not true believers, but at least a couple of those would be like the true believers, but at the very least 8 of those would be conservative. That is definitely, I think, an aspect of this, and they openly talk about it as if it's like owning the left.
Well, and similarly, they talk about when their own children go in directions that don't comport with their own ideology, the way they talk about it is basically the same as how you would talk about a kid who fucking died.
Yeah.
Like Elon Musk does this all the time with his own daughter. He will talk about how she is dead to him, like literally dead. And I do think that for most of the people who are diehards in this movement, they are unable to tolerate the idea of somebody who is their child, who they believe ought to inherit all of their qualities, who suddenly, in their eyes at least, wakes up one day and is like, I don't want to do this anymore.
Yeah.
And it's like, how the fuck could you possibly do that? That's where their thought goes.
No, that is the striking thing, is when Elon Musk talks about Vivian being dead, it's a very sad thing, not for her. She and a lot of people that I think have these moments where they are estranged from their family. Like it's very sad to be estranged from your family. I can't imagine. Like it probably is hard. But I think this is the consequence of including having children and your the having as many children as possible as part of a core of your ideology, where it politicizes to yourself your own child.
Yeah.
And it makes it hard. I think I imagine it makes it hard for them to truly love their kids. And I think that's why when a kid is trans and a parent takes that very badly, and the way they talk about it is always that they feel like it's an attack on them. And I think it's because of the politicized reality that they put onto their child.
Yeah, because your kids aren't just kids, nor do they even grow up to be just adults. They are in some way, shape, or form continuing a legacy or an ideology. And the way that these parents think about it, they have done everything necessary to pass on their values. And for some reason, now all of those values have gone out the window in favor of something new and unfamiliar. And it's difficult, if not impossible, for many of these people to accept that.
Yeah. I imagine for them, I don't agree, of course, but it probably does feel like a betrayal. It probably feels like being betrayed by a friend or a coworker or someone.
Or your own child.
Or
right?
your child.
Like what is a greater betrayal than being stabbed in the back by your own kid? Right?
Yeah.
And I think that going into today's subject, the reason I wanted to read that specific letter is that it jives very nicely with the core of what we're going to be talking about today with homeschooling.
Right.
So just to frame this up here, June, I asked that question in the intro. What is the point of school? What do you think?
I have always thought school is not about getting all A's. What school is about giving children, teenagers, adults who go to college, the critical thinking skills necessary to develop themselves into very competent adults. You can get straight A's and not really make it in life. It's a very common thing that I think we've talked about on a previous episode, probably the Quiverful episode. But I think ultimately what school should be about is development of a human being into a very strong-willed, very, very intelligent, very thoughtful, whether it be intelligence or emotional intelligence, just a very well-rounded person. I think that's what school should be or is about.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would add to that, not only is it something for you in terms of your own mind and how you think, it's also about how you relate with others.
Right.
That spending a lot of time around people who are not entirely like you is something that is going to prime you for the experience of being around people who aren't like you in life.
Yeah.
And that is a very important part of living life, that there will always be times where you come up against people who maybe disagree with you. Maybe they agree with you on some things and disagree with you on others. Maybe they have fully different backgrounds from you. And even though you ultimately feel similarly about a number of things, it's hard to see those similarities because of the differences in your background or your communication style or whatever. I mean, you're sort of alluding to that with emotional intelligence, right?
Yeah, we're human beings are a social species. Part of very important development for us is to be socialized properly and enough. Yeah. There's a pretty recent study that I found a while back. I wasn't planning for this episode, but I found this fascinating. Nature.com will be in the links down below, of course, as always. But it found that implicit racial biases are lower in bigger cities, just because you're surrounded by a lot more diverse people. So when you are raised in these environments, it's all about exposure. It's all about proper socialization. Growing up in these bigger towns, you're exposed to a lot more diverse people.
And because you are seeing more of a diverse group of people in your day-to-day, you're less likely to have these implicit biases and assumptions, basically otherizing the people that you're afraid of. Because you've had those firsthand experiences, turns out other people are just other people, you're less likely to have implicit racial bias.
And I do think that's part of why having those sympathies with different groups of people, why bigger cities, of course, tend to lean a lot more to the left.
Yeah. And I mean, this happens with a lot of things. Cultural diversity, too. When you were mentioning that, I just went and looked at other stuff, and I found an interesting article here from Nature. And this was in June, actually, of this year. They took a look at people listening to music on Deezer, the streaming platform, and they found that, perhaps unsurprisingly, you're more likely to have a diverse musical taste if you live in a big city.
That tracks. That absolutely tracks. You'll have less biases. You're exposed to a lot more different stuff. That's that like socialization in effect. Yeah. Yeah.
I also, and on that just brief note of like different kinds of music, it's going to be so fucking funny when Bad Bunny plays at the Super Bowl halftime show.
Oh my God.
I cannot fucking wait to see the reactions to that shit.
My favorite time of year is the Super Bowl, not because I enjoy football, but because I love every year there's a new way that conservatives freak out over the Super Bowl halftime performance. This year will be the craziest one yet. It's going to be demonic. It's going to be anti-American. It's going to be all of these things.
He's
it's going
probably
to be unreal.
I doubt he's going to speak a single fucking word of English up there.
Yeah.
And it is going to blow people away.
Yeah. And it's probably going to be an amazing halftime show.
Oh, it's going to be so good. He's amazing.
Right-wing, but just, I can probably write exactly what right-wingers are going to say now.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're going to be having
It's
meltdowns.
all been scripted.
Yeah.
They have the script ready to go in their own brains.
Yeah.
Anyway, point is, I agree with you. It's always two dumb bitches telling each other exactly, right?
What is a podcast but that? Yeah,
absolutely. But right, like it makes sense. The point I think of education should be to expand your horizons and cultivate your mind in such a way where you stay open to all of the possibilities of the world around you.
Right.
Now, homeschooling is generally not about that. There are examples where people do homeschool for those purposes, and I wanted to clear that right up top, that there do exist people, like there's lots of interesting examples of like anarchist homeschooling co-ops that do it for the purpose of like unlearning a lot of the standard imperialist dogma of the state school system. These are certainly interesting examples that are worth covering on a different podcast. We're a podcast about natalism, so we are going to be looking at the connection between homeschooling and the natalist movement. So what is homeschooling and who does it? Well, just to give you a working definition here, this actually comes from the National Household Education Survey, which is the big national data survey of education, as the name would imply. And I quote here, in the National Household Education Survey, students are considered to be homeschooled if all of the following conditions are met. Their parents reported them being schooled at home instead of at a public or private school. Their enrollment in public or private schools did not exceed 24 hours a week, and they were not being homeschooled only due to a temporary illness. So it has to be a full-time thing, and it can be augmented by like schooling in a school, but the core of it has to be at home.
Right.
Homeschooled students include those ages 5 to 17 with a grade equivalent of kindergarten through grade 12. Now, according to a Pew Research survey, 3.4% of K through 12 students in the U.S. were homeschooled in the school year of 2022 to 23. So that's obviously a minority. That's a small minority.
Very small. It is very small. But I feel like everyone knows at least one person at some point in their life that was the kid that was homeschooled.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because although that is a small minority, it is a significant one. If we assume that there are 50 million students in the United States, give or take, that's about 1.7 million kids.
And all 1.7 million are the anarcho education situations. Yeah.
That's right. They're all anarcho-syndicalists. They're all like reading Mao's red book for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
That's
exactly.
grade 1. Yeah.
Mao in grade 1. They move on to Lenin in grade 2.
Yeah.
And just to give you a sense of the demographics of homeschoolers, right? I've got here some stats from the National Household Education Survey that shows that in 2019, 2.8% of all students were homeschooled. About 4% of white kids, 1.2% of black kids, and 1.9% of Hispanic kids. So more common among white kids.
That is what I would imagine. Absolutely. Especially in the broader natalist movement that we've been witnessing.
Right.
Yeah.
And I also, again, want to make something very clear here. This is not just white people, obviously.
Right.
And in fact, black families are the fastest growing group of people who homeschool their kids. And a lot of that is due to systemic factors that we're going to be talking about, including, but not limited to, the pandemic and everything that happened as a result of that from 2020 onward. In terms of household composition, 1.6% of students who have two parents who work are homeschooled, whereas 6.6% of kids who have only one working parent are homeschooled.
Okay.
And
See,
this
that tracks, though,
makes sense.
It does make sense. One of the parents in a homeschooling situation would be the ideal person to do the teaching. If you're going to homeschool,
right,
the parent is likely going to want to do that, especially with some of the reasons I think we're going to be getting into. It'll make a lot more sense. Yeah.
Right. Also, somewhat notably, of students who have no parents in the workforce, 3% of them are homeschooled.
Oh. How does that work, huh? No parents in the workforce?
If your parents aren't in the workforce, they're probably living off government benefits or on family wealth.
A significant chunk of those are probably not the family wealth. It's probably just going to be the less the poor demographic.
I would imagine so. Yeah. I don't have the data, but that seems likely to me.
Yeah.
So why homeschool then? We've talked about what we think of as being the reason that you should educate and like what you would want in the ideal educational environment. But I've got here a series of reasons for homeschooling. This, again, is from the same survey. They listed out a number of potential reasons that people might want to homeschool, and then the parents they surveyed were allowed to select the answers that they wanted. And 80% of them had, and I quote here, a concern about school environment, such as safety, drugs, or negative peer pressure. Another 74% said a desire to provide moral instruction. Similar percent said emphasis on family life together. Similar percent said a dissatisfaction with the academic instruction at other schools. And then, surprisingly, only about 59% said a desire to provide religious instruction, which is less than you might think.
I would have expected it to be in the 70s to 80% range, but that's still, I mean, we can't scoff at that. That is still a wild amount of parents doing a homeschool. That's at least 800,000 students that are probably getting taught a very specific, probably likely very extreme religious education that excludes a lot of things, probably like evolution, probably like how old the age of the earth is. So a lot of stuff like that.
And we're going to be looking into that curriculum stuff in a little bit. And I was also interested in being like, all right, let's hear from the horse's mouth, right? As regards the kinds of people who we tend to talk about on this show, why are they homeschooling? And I got my hands on a copy of a book called Becoming Homeschoolers, written by a woman named Monica Swanson, which was published last year, 2024. And guess what, June?
It's a list! I got so giddy. I woke up today, I was laying in my bed. I'm like, I cannot wait to record this show because of a list. I've been list fiending. I've been fiending. I've been wanting one so bad. Thank you for giving me this list.
You're so welcome.
Yeah.
So, are you ready for the list of 10 things homeschoolers get to avoid?
Absolutely.
Number 1, homeschoolers avoid school violence.
Okay.
Mostly talking about school shootings here.
Yeah. Oh, that is probably a growing concern. I mean, when you and I were in school, high school, younger than that, I mean, school shootings were like a thing, but it was not like a daily occurrence where you open the news and you hear about a new school shooting. It's definitely ramped up in the last 10 to 15 years, which is, that's right around, I think, both of us exiting general education. Honestly, that's real as fuck. That's scary.
Yeah. I mean, it's remarkable how with the expiration of the assault weapons ban, right, regulating sales of AR type rifles, you can just see the number of school shootings go up.
No, but it's not the gun's fault.
It's
guns
not the gun's
don't
fault.
Kill people.
That's
people
right.
Kill people.
People kill
but
people.
We shouldn't do anything about that. Of course.
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. Well, maybe mental health or whatever.
But we won't do that either. But we'll talk about it. We'll talk about it.
So number 2, homeschoolers avoid negative socialization.
Oh, I'm making a stink face right now. This is a stinky one. I don't like this one.
Why do you like this one?
See, when I see that, especially with the amount of white people, I make some assumptions here. I think some of these people saying negative socialization would be like they want to segregate their child away from Black people, from gay people, from the woke agenda. I don't trust that answer. That's a very sus answer.
It is sus.
Very
and
sus.
The book is not explicit about what it means by negative socialization, actually. It just throws that term out and then leaves you to fill in the blanks.
I would have never guessed that very racist far-right people would be intentionally vague about their beliefs.
Weird, right?
Yeah.
Number 3, homeschoolers avoid unnecessary exposure to drugs and alcohol.
Well, understandable, but to me, this is one of those things where it's like your child is eventually going to do these things anyway. Probably not everyone, of course. Kids are, I think there's a lot of studies that come out every couple of months or so where Gen Z drinks less, does drugs less compared to previous generations. But this is, to me, this is like a hover parent sort of thing. This is one of those things where it's like you cannot control your child forever in that way. Yeah.
Right. Number 4, homeschoolers avoid, and then in parentheses, most bullying.
Most. That's for the parents to do. The
That's
parents
right.
gotta bully.
Or their older siblings, maybe. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
That's I mean, understandable, but again, I mean, sometimes bullying can be a crucial development in people. I don't like that.
You're saying it's good? You're saying it's good for kids to get bullied, June? Is that what you're telling me?
I'm not saying it's the worst thing that could ever happen to a child, depending on what the bullying is. I don't think I was ever bullied in school, but
really,
I'm gonna retract all of this because I wasn't even bullied. I can't be the one saying this.
Okay, so number 4, what we're saying is number 4 is a valid reason.
It's a valid. I retract everything.
Number 5, homeschoolers avoid the teaching of evolutionism as fact.
Evolutionism. That's
evolutionism.
A new ideology.
It's like transgenderism. It's an ideology.
You can just add ism onto anything, and it becomes a whole ideology. It becomes a whole world of an ideology, and that's understandable, especially with the rate of religiousness in homeschoolers. I would expect this would be a huge reason because evolution, religious conservatives view evolution as core opposition to their worldview.
Yeah. I gotta read you this sentence here
please,
that kicks this bit off. Since formal school-sponsored Bible readings and prayer were ruled out of public school classrooms in 1960, the anti-God momentum has only grown.
The anti-God. Evolutionism is an anti-God ideology.
The anti-God momentum would be an incredible name for an industrial band.
I was thinking more like a prog rock band, like Godspeed You, Black Emperor.
Oh, Godspeed You, Black Emperor. Yeah.
That would be something like that.
Or even like an emo outfit, right? Along the lines of like Panic at the Disco. The anti-God momentum.
No, there's that's a freebie for our listeners. If any of you musicians, free name right there.
I will say a few weeks ago, when 9 Inch Nails played Heresy. You know that song?
I don't.
God is dead and no one cares. If there is a hell, I'll see you there. I was like, damn, Trent, this must have been so edgy in 1991.
No, but that's the thing is like in the early days. It would scare the
shit out of these people though.
Yeah. And in the early days before there was like a more broader online atheist sort of movement when it felt like, and it still, I think for a long time still does and has felt like religiousness has like cultural hegemony in a lot of ways, especially in the politics. But stuff like that is very formative for a lot of people, especially as a child. And stuff like that was not that song specifically, but stuff like that. Oh, I can't tell you how formative Richard Dawkins arguing with that anti-evolution creationist video back in like 2007 was to me.
This is probably why your soul is going to hell.
Yeah.
And if you could have just listened to wise counsel and kept that Marilyn Manson and 9 Inch Nails out of your house, maybe you'd be in a better place now.
I wouldn't be thinking about these pesky things like evolutionism and gender indoctrination.
Yeah, because that's number 6. Homeschoolers avoid gender indoctrination.
And that's crazy because I still feel like, I don't know, you said this book came out in 2024.
Last year.
This is a very 2024 thing. I feel like before 2020, this was not really on anyone's radar.
Yeah.
So to put this in a primary reason, a main pillar of why you homeschool, that just goes to show how reactive they have been.
I'm very interested in the sentence here that reads, parents interviewed for a New York Times article expressed the frustration of discovering their child's preferred name, puts that in scare quotes, scribbled on a piece of paper at the bottom of their backpack, or finding out that the school knew more about their child's gender confusion than they did. Okay, motherfucker, I want you to think about that for like 2 goddamn minutes.
Yeah.
About why your kid might be more comfortable expressing things about their name or gender at school than at home. What do you think that means?
That this is always one of those points that conservatives bring up, and they don't realize they're telling on themselves.
Right.
They don't realize that their child is not telling them certain things because they either don't have that connection with their parents, that they trust them. They think that their parents might disown them. They might think that their parents might yell at them. So of course, the child, like your child, a child, they're not being indoctrinated. They just feel more comfortable in a space away from them. And ultimately, natalism is about, of course, the birth rate, but it is also about control.
Yes.
And this is one of those issues that I think outlines the controlling aspect of conservative parenthood perfectly, because it tells on themselves so well.
That's not what Monica says. Monica says that by the time her sons went away to college, they had a firm grip on the truth about their sexuality and identity from God's word. And they were also prepared with kind and gracious responses, still grounded in the truth, to situations they would face while away from home. So,
see, and also,
you don't know Monica's kids as well as she does, Drew.
I apparently don't. All I know is, I think, I'm not a parent, so who am I to say, but I think it's important for a child to explore what it means to be a person, what it means to be an individual, what it means to just be alive. Yeah. I think a parent weighing the scale in any direction, especially when it comes to individual identity with gender or sexuality, it's just going to build resentment over time.
Well, you may say that. And you do.
I do.
But I will give you a few more things that homeschoolers get to avoid, okay?
Yes.
Homeschoolers avoid learning about racial issues from a biased viewpoint.
Oh. They don't like how they talk about MLK Jr.'s dream.
Parents
that's
have
really
the
bad.
responsibility of teaching kids that God created all people in a beautiful variety of shades as part of the human race. I love that. I love that, because the implicit assumption here, if these beautiful shades were created by God, it means that we need to preserve these shades because they're part of the natural order, which means that race mixing is not okay.
They just don't like, I wouldn't be surprised I don't have the data on this, but they probably do. A lot of these people probably don't like race mixing. They obviously don't like talking about the civil rights movement. They just find this very, very bad.
Number 8, homeschoolers avoid pressure to date before they are ready.
This is speaking a little bit to the purity balls and daddy-daughter sort of relationships. The episode we did, I think 5 episodes ago. This is, again, about control. You know, I think I started dating when I was in high school, when I was 17. And, you know, looking back, I'm like, not the ideal relationship for me at the time. Would it have been better to wait? I don't know. I think again, what I always go back to with like school and all of this is making mistakes, even in formative years, builds you into who you are. Trying to prevent your child from making mistakes just hinders them. It hinders their growth.
Yes, I completely agree. But the way that I think these parents see this, and we're going to see more examples of this throughout this episode, the belief is that homeschooling will prevent them from ever having to experience those difficult moments, and that they will just have the guidance to avoid making any mistake ever.
That's not how humans are.
No,
sorry. That's just not how we are. We suck. We're dumb.
And to another point of like something that I'm sorry, I just don't buy because this isn't how humans are. Number 9, homeschoolers avoid the comparison trap.
What does that mean?
That means that because they're homeschooled, they're never going to be comparing themselves to others.
No. I mean, especially with the proliferation of social media, that's just not ever going to be how it is. Yeah.
But it's basically her argument is that like if you go to school, you're going to be comparing yourself to how the other kids dress or the goods that they have or who's getting the best grades or who's got the most talent.
They just don't want you to live in a society. I mean, that's like being around others and seeing people different is just what society is.
Yeah. And again, it's like there's a grain of something here, which is that, yes, when you're an adolescent and you're going through that period of like having no self-identity to having a fully established self-identity, in the middle there, your self-identity is entirely determined by the people around you. That is true.
That is, yeah.
But you're not going to avoid that by homeschooling. You're just not.
No, you won't. You'll never stop that.
Number 10 is that homeschoolers avoid feeling stuck. And that's just not, I can't even disprove that. That's like, that's not like, to me, it's like that's very clearly not true because feeling stuck, again, is just sort of part of the human experience. I think what she means by this is that if you're the kind of student who's like ahead of other kids in your class, you can just keep going and not have to be held back by the others. But again, I would argue that that's part of the point of school.
Yeah.
Speaking as somebody who was always pretty, and this is not to fucking toot my own horn or whatever, but like,
you're a gifted kid. I know, Josh. I know you. You were a gifted kid. I know this.
It's fine. Like whatever. I was a fucking gifted kid. I was, and I think that there was a time where I was really fucking obnoxious about it, and I was like, why are these other kids just not as good at this shit as I am? And then at some point I realized, well, because not everybody is the same as me, and that's okay, and maybe that's actually good. And maybe there are things that they're good at that I'm not good at, like sports, for instance. What if the entire fucking like order of our society was based on how good you are at sports? I'd be fucked.
No, I think it's actually better that you don't understand that everyone's different. I think that's I think that's bad, actually.
It's better. It's better for you to have
a superiority complex.
It's better for you to have a superiority complex and an understanding of the world that sees you as the sole protagonist of reality. I agree.
There's no issues that arise from that.
So now that we've gotten done clowning on somebody, as we love to do on this show,
my favorite, yeah.
I want to actually get a little more analytical about this. I would group the most common reasons for homeschooling into three main categories. And I would say these are socioeconomic, pedagogical, and ideological.
Okay.
So by socioeconomic, I basically just mean like, what are the material forces at play in education, and how does that impact the schooling that is available to a given family, right? So for instance, in your local school district, there might be an unsafe school environment where there are gangs or a lot of violence or even threats of guns. Your child maybe doesn't fit into the social or group dynamics of the school that they are attending for one reason or another. Maybe your local school is underfunded. Maybe it's underappointed. Maybe, for one reason or another, it just isn't up to par.
I would also imagine some of this intersects a little bit with maybe some more rural districts where people tend to be a little bit more poor. There's maybe not just schools even nearby. Maybe for some people, the only option is to homeschool because the closest school is an hour and a half away and there is no bus. There is a lot of very underfunded regions in this country where that is probably for some the best option is to homeschool.
That's absolutely true. Yeah. Geographical distance, another really important socioeconomic reason that you might homeschool.
Yeah.
There's also pedagogical reasons. Maybe you or the kid, right, really wants to be able to access certain educational approaches or models that are simply not available in the local school. Maybe the kid is fucking obsessed with classics and just really wants to do the fucking classical education thing where you start out with certain ratings and then you build on top of that. Maybe you have a preference, or the kid has a preference for experiential learning over just book and classroom learning, right? And wants to go to different places and see these things hands-on in a way that traditional schooling doesn't allow for. Or, and this is probably the most common thing I see for a pedagogical reason, is that the child has certain special learning needs, and the local school is either unable to accommodate or will not accommodate.
That one probably ties into funding issues for schools too, because I think we've touched on a lot in this show so far, as I feel like the last couple episodes have been very educational focused, and I think a through line with all of this is public education is just very underfunded. So if a child has greater needs, some of these schools just might not even be accessible at all. So that one makes sense. Yeah. And it sounds like pedagogical. A lot of these might be people who are a little bit more well off, have a lot more opportunity. This is probably not really to do a lot with the very far right natalist perspective. It's maybe a very wealthy, well off family that has the means to
Yes.
help their kids. And in some cases, maybe not. In some cases, maybe not.
In some cases, maybe not.
Yeah.
But also, to the point of these pedagogical issues, more often than not, a family with means can then afford to send their child to a school that will meet these needs.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
The third one, the big one, and I think the one that we're going to be talking about most today, is the ideological reasons. So first and foremost among them is a desire to reinforce religious convictions and morals.
Right.
These are sort of my standards of what I consider morality to be. I want you, my child, to reflect those. Therefore, I need to teach you about these things, and I am worried that my local school will not do that to the same degree that I will.
The Marxists, the secret Marxists.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Also, of course, curriculum worries, as were alluded to earlier, comprehensive sex ed, teaching evolution, not teaching the Bible, unless you're in the great state of Oklahoma, in which case you will be taught the Bible.
They do that there? Oh, I thought that was not constitutional. I thought that was against separation of church and state.
It's not, but they're doing it anyway.
Awesome.
And of course, transing your kids. The state will trans your kids.
I'm going to see really quick. I'm going to see where Oklahoma ranks in national education. So there's 50 states. Oh, Oklahoma is ranked 50th in the country in terms of national education.
Wait, really?
They are 50.
They're dead last?
They're dead last. Huh. Interesting.
Unfortunate.
Yeah.
There's also, of course, the fear that state schooling actively undermines the authority and morality of the parent more broadly. Like, for instance, last week with the Moms for Liberty episode, we listened to that clip about the lady who was mad that her kid attended a campus queer rights group meeting.
Right.
It's just this idea that, like, at the school, your morals are going to be corroded, basically.
Yeah, there is like a level of access a child has to wrong, and I'm doing this in quotes from their perspective,
right?
Wrong information, wrong think. They do not want their child to have a broader education. They want their child to be shielded from things they find immoral.
Right. We've also got a belief that a mixed-age family structure is just more naturally conducive to a good educational environment than a same-age environment of one's peers. This is particularly relevant as regards natalist families, because they're going to be big families with kids who are a wide range of ages. And something that you see pretty commonly across these big natalist families is this idea of, like, part of the reason that it's so good to do homeschooling is that the older kids can take care of the younger kids and blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. And in some cases, teach,
right.
Be involved in each other's entire education. There is a crossover with everyone's education.
And there's the sense that leads to a more bonded family.
Right.
And then last but not least, you just have a generalized distrust of the state, educators, the educational profession, teachers' unions. And that's just something that the organized right is able to use as a bugbear to try to convince people to homeschool their kids.
Yes, yes. It's part of the whole project to defund public education, I do think,
right.
Yeah.
Now, as I said, not all homeschooling comes from the right, but because we are a podcast about natalism and because we are talking about how this plays out in the United States, here, in the USA, homeschooling does have a characteristic ideological valence, and it sounds like this.
You know, we kind of breezed by this early on in our discussion today, but this idea of indoctrination that occurs in schools and the need for parents today to be much more on their toes about it, I want to get into that a little bit. And the fact that your child's faith development is so much more secure, not guaranteed, but more secure in predictable outcomes.
Right.
That your child will love the Lord and follow the Lord if you're able to continue to shape that worldview.
Sure.
Which, again, you talk to the teachers' unions and others that are really on to the indoctrination issues. That's why they don't want you to homeschool, because they want those kids to be able to learn all of the gender stuff and everything else that's occurring. Speak to you
stuff.
And Dave, your husband's alertness to this, and one of the reasons you didn't want to put your kids in that kind of situation.
Well, I think this is one of those topics that is becoming more and more apparent, even in the past couple of years. And again, you already said it, but I say to the people out there who say, well, I did fine in public school. I just want to remind parents that the world is different, literally year by year. So I think we developed more of a awareness of this as our kids grew up. Yeah. But giving kids a biblical worldview is huge. If they make it through high school with their faith intact, now they're going to leave the home, and whether they're in a college, university setting or workforce, they're going to hear a lot of voices and a lot of messaging. And so we want to make sure our kids understand what they believe and why they believe before they leave the home. And I think it's going to be really hard to do that in those hours when kids go to school and then they have sports and clubs and all the things. And if you're trying to give them a biblical worldview, it's going to be really difficult to do. And then they're away at school where we know kids are more likely to become like the company they keep. So even if they have that faith growing up, if they are surrounded all day by teachers with their philosophies, whatever that might be, sometimes good, not always, with their peers and all the messaging that is now becoming more and more normal in the schools, it's a dangerous place to be.
So that is Jim Daly, host of Focus on the Family Radio, in conversation with Monica Swanson, who wrote the 10 things homeschoolers get to avoid, as well as the rest of that book.
This project from the right is so afraid of their kids just even having outside information.
Yes.
If they could go off the grid without the internet, I'm sure they would like to do that. They genuinely fear, and that says a lot about, I think, what their worldview is, that if even just learning about other types of people can crumble an entire child's worldview that quickly that they raised, I mean, that's an indictment on their entire project, that they have to withhold so much in life, different life experiences and potential friendships with other students. That's what they have to do to ensure that this project of natalism is upheld, this Christian nationalism.
Well, and it's an indictment of their own worldview in their own lives, too, because it speaks to the fact that they are presumably pretty afraid of something upsetting their house of cards. If I am confident in my child's character, I say this as not a parent, right? I don't have kids. But if I had a kid, I would raise that kid to be comfortable and confident in their character so that they would be able to make decisions that make sense when they are in high pressure situations, and also to know that they can get a hold of me if they get in over their heads. I would not be afraid that, oh no, if they go out across the railroad tracks, they're going to become Christians.
No, that's just not, I think, how you should raise a child. That's not the point of education. The point of education isn't to withhold, it's to teach. It's to expand someone's worldview, their ability to reason. That's not what they are doing. That's not what this ideological homeschooling project is.
So now that we've had a chance to frame up the ideology, I want to talk about the philosophical origins of modern homeschooling, like as we know it. So a couple things I wanted to say right up top here. If you're not familiar with the education system in the USA, it's kind of weird. And so there are three main points that are worth keeping in mind here. First of all, everything to do with curriculums, standards, really all laws regarding like what happens in a given school system is set at the state level. So there are 50 different sets of laws about how education should work in the United States. Public schools are funded by local municipalities, so cities, townships, counties, and this is via property taxes. So like June was saying, there are situations where some schools are going to be underfunded relative to schools that may be very nearby, because some of these schools are going to be in wealthy towns and cities, and those wealthy towns and cities have higher value property, meaning those school districts are going to be wealthier. And you can get school districts that are literally adjacent to each other, where one is very rich and one is very poor. And
this is the problem broadly with school choice vouchers and school choice in general, is a wealthy person might be, their property is within a district of a like maybe underfunded school. It's relative to everyone else. Maybe this family is one of the more well-off families in the school, but they are not happy with that. They want to send their child to a better school. So that takes that money out of that school funding. And that's the danger with school choice, is it further defunds already not properly funded schooling systems.
And then in terms of the federal government, the actual government of the United States of America, the one that is currently shut down,
Yay!
Hooray! The way that it interacts with schools is basically there are certain national laws, like civil rights laws, for instance, that the federal government does enforce on schools. And so Title IX, for example, is enforced by the federal government. And we also talked about during the sex education episode that they can provide block funding to the state level that is taken out of federal taxes. But otherwise, it cannot enable or restrict states to make decisions about their schooling. And that's because of the 10th Amendment to the United States Constitution and just the way that that's all written. So
it's how you see things like abstinence-only sex education introduced but not enforced in different school districts and states. Right. Yeah.
And so there's your little primer in one of the weirder aspects of American dual federalism, which is how education works in this country. Now let's talk about a few national decisions that really changed the shape of education and set us onto the path to homeschooling. After the war, after World War II, almost everybody was going to a state school. But then what happened was we had the Brown v. Board of Education decision in 1954. And of course, what that did was it said, hey, these states in the South that are claiming that some schools are just for black people and some schools are just for white people, that these schools are separate but equal, well, that's bullshit. You can't do that. And force those schools to integrate. There were also the Supreme Court decisions Engel v. Vitale from 1962 and Abington School District v. Schempp from 1963. Basically, these were rulings that said that state schools cannot lead prayer or do readings from the Bible. And that was another form of de-Christianizing the public schools. And so in response to this, fear of desegregation and secularization, this then led to the establishment of private Christian day schools. And this was especially, although certainly not only, in the South.
I didn't realize that private Christian schools was a relatively new phenomena within American history. Like I grew up in one. I went to a Catholic school, but I had just always thought, especially with religion, you always just think, oh, it's an ancient thing. It's probably going to have been there for a long time. But it's a relatively new, interesting fact that desegregation is sort of the crisis point for that.
Yeah.
That's kind of a fun little fact about what drives a lot of the fears of education and public education.
In a lot of Catholic education, specifically Jesuit education, is a pre-war phenomenon.
Okay.
It's just like private Protestant day schools.
Right.
That's the big thing that really blew up after Brown v. Board.
Seeing those pop up, especially like in my life in the town I grew up in, it's like, that doesn't look like a normal school. Why is it called like Faith University, like Faith High School? It's like, that doesn't seem like a high school. That seems fake. That doesn't seem like correct at all.
Yeah, odds are very, very good that school did not exist before the year 1960.
Definitely not, no.
So I have a quote here from a book called Homeschooling, The History and Philosophy of a Controversial Practice by James Dwyer. Despite their relatively late start, so-called Christian day schools experienced explosive growth in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Schools reflecting the approaches of Rushdoony, who is a guy who was active in sort of this Christian school movement, and others for whom the public schools were anathema, were founded and grew at astonishing rates in this period. According to one estimate, enrollment in them expanded by over 200% between 1965 and 1975. So tripled, with overall enrollment in such institutions approaching 500,000 people by the end of that period. As the historian Adam Latz has noted, that number would essentially double by 2002 as evangelical and fundamentalist K-12 schools continued to grow. Evangelical leader Jerry Falwell, who opened the Lynchburg Christian Academy in 1967, lauded the rapid emergence of the Christian day school movement as, quote, the hope of this republic, end quote. A bulwark against the baleful influences that permeated the nation's public schools and threatened to undermine the nation's core Christian values.
So this really goes hand in hand with the evangelical movement to sort of politicize a lot of different issues like abortion.
That's right.
A lot of what we imagine today as like a very far-right evangelical movement. This was a part of that. That's fascinating.
And you'll remember also, as we talked about in our episode on abortion, that was also a racialized flashpoint.
Yes.
That was Protestants and Catholics joining hands to create a new consensus block around the issue of school desegregation, which ended up manifesting as the anti-abortion movement.
And I think they tie that fear in with secularization, because secularization is what I think they're really talking about when they talk about like Marxist education, about like Marxist professors, is the idea that like religion does not influence your education. And that, I think, is the greatest fear that a lot of these people have historically had.
Or that, not even that it doesn't influence, just that the very idea that Christianity is not the center of the education is intolerable to them. So, meanwhile, parallel to this, late 60s, early 70s, is the birth of the so-called unschooling movement. Are you familiar with unschooling?
I can't say I am, no.
Remember how I talked about like the crazy anarchist co-ops and all that?
Yeah.
That's unschooling. It's the idea that like the structure of traditional schooling is first and foremost just about creating a pliable workforce, and that the best way to fight back against that is to allow kids to do whatever the fuck it is that they want to do and follow their learning in whatever way their inquisitive minds desire.
Right. So it's the idea that structure at all it enforces capitalism.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And the primary advocate for unschooling was this guy named John Holt, and he saw the sort of one-size-fits-all model of public schooling as unnecessarily restrictive. And on the other ideological side, you've got this guy named Raymond Moore. He's a Seventh-day Adventist. He has a doctorate in education.
I love those people.
They're great,
those
aren't
people
they?
are crazy.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah, Seventh-day Adventist, for those not aware, that is a very unusual subset of Christianity where their big thing is that Saturday is the actual Sabbath, and the people who go to church on Sundays are heathens. But beyond that, very strange and very fundamentalist for a lot of different reasons.
They're kind of a death cult. I know someone who grew up in Seventh-day Adventist, and I have learned a lot about this specific sect because of my friend who has just gone off about her childhood. It's crazy. They want the end times. Like a lot of evangelicals, they want the rapture to happen, but this group in particular, they really want the end times. Like they hope it's like tomorrow. They hope they wake up.
They are attempting to immanentize the eschaton.
Yes,
as they say.
Yeah.
Anyway,
fascinating group.
Raymond Moore has a doctorate in education from the University of Southern California, and he publishes this paper called The Dangers of Early Schooling, The Need to Re-Examine Our Motives and Methods in September of 1973. And in this paper, Moore argues that the structure of schooling in early childhood is deleterious to most children, and it does reflect Holt and unschooling in one meaningful way, which is that it asserts that the U.S. school system basically rushes to standardize children through the process of early education to get them to work as soon as possible, which I agree with. That's the one thing in this paper I agree with, but some of the other claims are a bit more questionable. Children, according to this paper, children generally lack the mental capacity to start reading before they turn 7, 8, or 9 years old.
Oh my God. So it's very crucial. Like by that point, if they don't, it's going to be a very hard time. They're going to have a hard time. Am I reading this correctly?
They don't think that kids should be even allowed to read before they turn 7.
They don't think they should?
Correct.
That's fucking crazy. What? No, come on. Oh my God.
Because it's like the letters will like cloud up their poor child minds or whatever. I shit you not. That's one of the assertions made
wild.
Here. Parallel to that, he claims that a child's growth is generally going to be stunted if he has to spend a significant time away from his mother before he turns 10.
Oh. So is he saying that like technically, theoretically, like a mother homeschooling situation would be good in this sense, but going to a school with teachers that are not your parent is bad?
That is correct, because the maternal bond is a very fragile thing, and when it's severed, it's going to cause the child to be really fucked up, and it's only around the time that the child turns 10 that they're durable enough to go out away from their mother.
Okay. I mean,
this is horse shit, by the way.
This is fucking crazy. This, children are very malleable, but I think I think kindergarten's generally fine.
Yeah.
Like that's like 5-year-olds. I don't think that's a a horrifying thing for a child to
Also,
go through.
10 is what? 5th grade, right?
Yeah. Oh my God. Now you should. Oh my God. This is a wild. I wonder why this never took on.
Took
off.
Well, it's interesting you say that.
Oh.
Another assertion made in this paper. Putting a child in a daycare center will result in insufficient emotional or mental development compared to keeping that child at home. Always.
Okay.
It's just going to happen, according to these people.
Yeah.
And it also makes the claim, without any evidence or backup, that homeschooling is going to always be more cost-effective for the taxpayer than public schooling.
I don't think that's true.
No, I don't think it's true either.
I don't think that's true. No.
Yeah, that doesn't really make much sense. But,
no, none of this really does. Can I be real? This is a lot of horseshit. This is a lot of just dumb shit.
And so, June, I would like you to read the prescription that Moore offers here in this paper after introducing this evidence.
Mothers apparently need not worry about teaching as such. The evidence suggests that they simply should be mothers, warm, responsive, and as consistent as possible, providing a happy climate as the bud begins to bloom. They can share the work of the home more and more, giving the child the experience of being needed and the therapeutic experience of doing something for others. If they do this, they will most likely send to the school youngsters who are more stable, optimistic, self-respecting, better disciplined, and more highly motivated. Such a program is integrative instead of divisive from the family point of view, and normally should provide for the child the warm, unbroken environment he needs. More often than not, such parent home education will also gain parental understanding and support for the school. Where many now are urging parental participation in preschools, we suggest that the educational community center its efforts on the home rather than the school whenever possible, at least for the child's first 7 years. The paper concludes, then, this perhaps should be the main educational thrust of our century. The combination of parent education and of home care for the majority of our children, along with warm surrogate care for the less fortunate, may well be the crucial factor in the survival of the family and of our civilization. Holy shit.
That's not too dissimilar from the 14 words. No. I'm just saying.
Oh, that felt gross to read out. Oh my God. No, this is some very much, this is what underlines a lot of white supremacy, is that the future of our civilization is at stake unless we do certain things.
But this is also we've heard versions of this rhetoric so often on this show when we've covered natalism. Yeah. This idea of the guaranteed survival of the family and our civilization. They say it time and time and time again. And Moore's prescription here was oriented toward the Christian family, unsurprisingly. And it turns out, you're going to love this, June. In the 1970s...
Will I? I hope not. I hope I don't love it.
It turns out in the 1970s, there was a certain radio program that was hosted by another graduate of the University of Southern California who was all too happy to have this man, Raymond Moore, on the show. Can you guess what that man's name was and what the radio program was?
I don't even want to say it. I don't want to say it. Is it James Dobson?
Yep. And focus on the family.
Come the fuck on.
Yes.
Yes. I hate, it makes sense. It makes sense that every time we talk about one of these topics, it's like, oh, of course it stems from the bloom of all of this ideology. I mean, and arguably, I think James Dobson is the grandfather of the moment we're living in right now. So it makes sense. But just every single time we talk about any of this, and it's like, oh, and here is James Dobson yet again. It's like, come the fuck on.
When I was doing my research for this episode and I saw this, I was like, no fucking way. But also, of course.
Yeah, of course.
And that clip that we were listening to earlier, that is also from Focus on the Family Radio last year. Yeah. They've been on this beat for so long.
Very interesting. And I think sort of, again, going back to the genesis of the show is just seeing the interlinkedness of natalism and white supremacy. It is almost inherent to the Natalist project.
And I think we should now talk about the modern framework of homeschooling as it is understood legally in the United States now. Because, again, you've got this radio broadcast on Focus on the Family, and you know who ended up listening to it was a couple lawyers named Michael Ferris and Michael Smith. And these two Michaels were homeschooling their kids. And they listened to Focus on the Family, and they were like, oh, this is great. It's finally somebody who gets it. And they decided, because they were both lawyers and they had a common interest, they decided to found an organization that would expand the legal recognition of homeschooling and prevent it from being subject to state regulation or oversight. So they did exactly that in 1983. They co-founded the Homeschool Legal Defense Association, or HSLDA. In June, I'm going to play you a little clip now. This is from their website, and this is just a normal homeschool mom. She's talking about like what her deal is and how HSLDA helps her.
If you ask 100 people what freedom means, you're likely to get 100 different answers. You have to fill in the blanks, and that's really the beauty of it. We all have the freedom to do what we believe is best for our family and what's best for our children. As a military spouse and parent of 9 children, having that flexibility to know that I can say, okay,
children.
How is this child learning, and what can I change to help her learn better is just incredible. It doesn't have to be the same as what my other children are doing or the other families in our homeschool group. I can give each of my children exactly what they need in order to thrive. The freedom to pursue our own paths as families and as people can allow us to come together and sort of compare notes, to really learn from each other. On a regular basis, my children and I are interacting with people who are different from us in terms of how we think and live.
Oh, are they?
Whether it's in our neighborhood, volunteering in the community, or at youth group. And from these experiences, I think we can all walk away as better learners and better people. I think freedom matters not only because of what it is, but also because of what we can do with it. The freedom we have in homeschooling allows us to give our children some truly amazing experiences. So for my family, it's really been life-changing.
So there's some internal cuts in there to subject you to as little of that royalty-free music as possible, June. But I'm curious your first impressions on this.
It's exactly what I expected. The like, oh, see, we're getting different perspectives from what they mean from different perspectives isn't like a diverse group of people. It just is like a different family that also is in an association with them.
I would assume so. Yeah.
These are
like,
not our
people...
youth groups, our neighborhood. It's like, well, is that really a different perspective?
Right.
Your neighbor, like your neighbor in the suburbs, that's not really a different perspective.
These are all people who are electing to homeschool. That's going to draw a very specific type of person.
Yeah. And as we saw, very likely to be a more conservative religious person. Yeah.
So I'm going to read you their mission statement now, because I think this pretty well sums up what HSLDA's whole deal is. It's not just a mission statement, it's also a pitch, which is kind of weird, but here we go. No other form of education allows the kind of customization and personalization that homeschooling does. As a homeschooling parent, you are free to teach your child at her own pace, follow her interests, and craft an education plan that meets her specific needs. The result is a unique educational experience that equips your child with the skills and opportunities she needs to really thrive. We also believe that parents are typically better suited than the government to determine what kind of education works best for their children. Parents know their children's needs and abilities much better than any government official can, and they're better able to find ways to meet those needs and nurture those abilities. And so when parents are free to choose and direct their children's educational experience, it sets the stage for children to thrive. Because of these beliefs, we've made it our goal to tirelessly advocate for the right to homeschool in courts, legislatures, and anywhere else we can make ourselves heard. Ultimately, we are here to empower and encourage homeschooling parents as they seek to teach their children in a way that celebrates their uniqueness and nurtures their love of learning.
You know, learning about all of this, these different groups, about the main reasons why most people want to homeschool. Can I have my hot take of the day?
I'm willing to listen. I can't guarantee I'll agree with you, but I'm willing to hear it.
So, and of course, this comes with the acknowledgement that there are people that homeschool that are not, these very religious far-right people. It comes with the acknowledgement that some people do homeschool out of necessity. But I'm so anti-homeschooling. In an ideal world, we would be able to abolish homeschooling and give those that need to do it, like for disability purposes, the means they need so they can go to like a public school. I think homeschooling, this group, of course, sounds like it very much upholds the homeschooling system, the people that encourage homeschooling. I feel like it's so bad. I just reading this, listening to you read that off, it's just bad.
What is it about it that gets you?
It's sort of like a cult, like mentality for a lot of people. It's the control that parents want. They want to shape their child to be a specific way. They want their child to have a very specific worldview. And as to quote the paper from before, citing the survival of the family and our civilization. That is not just like we need to better educate us all so we can like advance as a society, which I think would be a reasonable way to put like maybe a not crazy version of that. But the fact that it's so explicitly like a white nationalist project for so many and to indoctrinate their child to believe certain things is what's so concerning to me.
And I'm very hung up on the phrase, parents know their children's needs and abilities much better than any government official can, because I
don't agree.
That's not necessarily true.
No.
It's true, I'm sure, in some cases. But I would say, for my money, if you have a good teacher who is very invested in their job and working at a public school with sufficient resources, I think that teacher is going to be better at identifying a child's educational needs and delivering on them than that child's parent. That's what I fundamentally believe to be true.
Yeah, I mean, we can measure these things out. It's not like we're just throwing darts at the wall for education. They know more than anyone else what childhood development looks like and a proper development of a human being looks like.
There is a reflexive distrust of credentials and expertise.
Yeah.
There's this idea of, oh, well, you have your big fancy pants college degree, but you don't know my kid as well as I do. And that may or may not be true.
I mean, in this episode so far, we have heard examples of children not trusting their parents, hiding certain things from them because they know they might get yelled at.
I mean, I just think about that email that we got that one time from the teacher in Chicago who was talking about how, like, he has had students come out to him before they came out to their own fucking parents.
And some of these parents think that's like, oh, this is like a nefarious thing
the teacher's
that's going
trying
on.
to like fucking steal my kid away from me.
And that's not ever what's happening. That's not what's ever happened. It's because they don't feel comfortable telling their parents these things.
Right.
And that's, again, an indictment on them.
And also, to expand the expertise thing one thing further, it doesn't just stop at education. You know, for instance, you can look at healthcare policy. Mm-hmm. You can look at the increased tendency of parents to refuse vaccinations for their kids, standard immunization schedules, right? Yeah. Because they believe that they know more about their kids' health than pediatricians who have trained up on this shit their entire lives and have seen kids die of fucking whooping cough. You know what I mean?
Yeah. There is this growing trend of the distrust of the knowledgeable, of the experts, I guess you can say. There has been a very intentional push from some politicians, but especially voices in the right-wing world, like influencers, pushing homeschooling, pushing questioning health standards for their families, for themselves, for their kids. And it's a very worrying trend. It is.
Yeah. And we might as well talk a little bit now about how HSLDA actually works, right? Because this is the homeschooling advocacy legal organization in the United States. They are the most powerful. They have been very influential in making homeschooling legal in all 50 states. And one of the sneaky things they do, because they're very fucking sneaky.
Lawyers, they're really sneaky.
I mean, yes. But they're even sneakier than your average lawyer, because they claim to represent all homeschool families. And that is technically true, insofar as their legal mandate is to make homeschooling as widely available and unregulated as possible, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But they are an explicitly Christian organization, and they don't exactly hide the ball about that. Like, if you go on their website, one of the things on their FAQ is, are you a Christian organization? And they say, yes, we are. But I don't think that they are as upfront as they maybe could or should be about the exact type of Christians that they are, right? Because these are people who are very well connected to conservative causes and the Christian Republican power machine, basically.
I mean, if focus on the family is what inspired them, it's pretty easy to make a lot of assumptions about them.
Exactly. Yeah. So Michael Ferris, one of the co-founders, he was also president of the Alliance Defending Freedom from 2017 to 2022. Are you familiar with the ADF, June?
I've heard of the ADF. I don't know much about it specifically, though.
They are basically the bizarro ACLU. Their entire focus is on defending the rights of Christians from liberal, whatever the fuck, in the American government.
Yeah.
In fact, there was the movie Average Joe, which was about that guy in fucking Bremerton, Washington, who was praying with his students at midfield during a football game, that high school football coach.
Yes,
do you remember that?
Yes, I do.
The ADF represented him in court. That's the kind of case that they take.
So a lot of these very Christian-specific projects.
Yes. Not just Christian, but specifically like anti-abortion, anti-LGBTQ.
Oh, of course. Yeah.
That's sort of their wheelhouse. They don't want people to hear about trans kids.
I mean, that's why people homeschool at all for some of these families.
Well, exactly.
They're scared of the gender. So they don't like the pronouns.
Yeah, I mean, in that book, Becoming Homeschoolers, one of my favorite fucking sentences that's like an attempt to scare you about what's happening in the public schools is, it is not unusual for elementary school kids to introduce themselves with and discuss their gender pronouns.
Oh, that's not unusual. It really terrifies. This stuff really scares
they
these
can't
these
deal
people.
with pronouns.
It's like kryptonite to them.
So other things about HSLDA that like show you what they're really up to. Between 2004 to 2014, there was an entire page on their website about why they oppose same-sex marriage. It's very interesting that that page is not on their website anymore.
Oh. I'm actually surprised, especially with how, like, a lot of right-wingers, Christians specifically, have sort of been openly turning on, or maybe they were never really in favor of it, but they're amping up the anti-gay rhetoric again. So I'm kind of surprised about that one.
I guess it's just, Obergefell v. Hodges was decided in 2015, and I do think at that point it was like, okay, we've lost the battle because that's the law of the land now. Yeah. They also have a sister organization called Generation Joshua, which unfortunately is not I wish it was a national summit for guys named Josh, but unfortunately that is not what it is. It's basically a series of events that mobilize young Christians into the political arena, particularly homeschooled kids.
Okay. Oh, wow.
It's basically, it is a pipeline to get Christian homeschoolers into the halls of power in D.C., basically. And state legislatures as well.
Christians are really good at creating groups.
Yes, they are. So how do they do it? Mechanically. Basically, they have a membership-based model, and they currently claim 90,000 plus active members. In order to become a member, you need to pay $150 a year, or $15 a month, or $1,500 for a lifetime membership.
That's a steal.
Yeah.
Honestly, if you're going to be a homeschool family, like you might want 10 kids or so.
$1,500 is the value play for sure.
Right. Yeah. I mean, if you're going to have 10 kids, raise them all homeschooled. That's just the economical choice.
I was like, well, what's $15? I could drop $15 and get behind the paywall and see what they have on offer. I was really going to do that for this episode, but unfortunately, it is $15 a month with a minimum 1 year contract. Basically.
Oh my God, they make you sign shit. They're hiding.
So you get auto billed every month for $15 for a year, and I wasn't about to do that.
Oh, I respect the play though.
Yeah.
That's my favorite thing, trying to like learn about different groups that we cover. Like on this show or Kill the Computer is like, okay, but what do you actually get when you pay them the money for the service they say they provide? Like what kind of information do they give you at that point?
And maybe at some point, if we want to do a deeper dive into HSLDA specifically, I would have to pay $150 because that's the value play there. Because if you do $15 a month for a year, obviously that's $200. So you should just pay the $150, whatever.
Fuck.
My point here is that once you've paid that, you get a few things. You get access to a library of homeschooling resources as well as on-demand legal advice. Like you can call them and be like, hey, I have a question about legal compliance in my state. Like, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm in compliance in the state of California? And they'll be like, you have to do this, that, and the other thing, right? Also, if you end up in litigation with the state, They will represent you in court if they determine that your case is one that is winnable or would make for a good battle. According to their website, they did 23 court appearances on behalf of their members in 2024.
So I mean, it's, 90,000 people in this group, but they are very active.
Yes.
Especially with the on-demand calls, very accessible. It sounds like and just like homeschooling itself, very tight community of people that do a lot of political actions. Yeah.
And they also, of course, then use this for advocacy as well. They have 90,000 members. That means that they have a pretty good built-in mailing list that they can use to push things, right?
Yeah.
And they have a sister organization called HSLDA Action that they do most of that through, kind of like how Focus on the Family also has the Family Policy Alliance.
Yeah.
Very similar stuff here. Very similar model. Not a surprise.
It really does seem like a lot of these right-wing groups have the sister group that is the Action one.
Yep. And that's just a legal thing because a 501c4 is a different type of organization from a C3. And so there are different things that you can and cannot do. They also publish a magazine called The Court Report, 3 issues a year of The Court Report. It sucks shit. I've read some issues, some articles. Not good.
Did you learn anything from it?
Yeah, but not really. It's
nothing useful for you.
Not for me specifically, no. But I think the thing that jumped out at me the most is that they also offer an online academy. And this is...
I love online academies.
Don't we? Like Moms for Liberty, right?
Moms for Liberty U.
Except that unlike Moms for Liberty U, this is just an actual honest-to-goodness distance learning thing. So that if you've got kids in high school and they're taking classes in subject matter that is too advanced for you to teach them, you can pay the HSLDA Online Academy and do a lesson with a teacher. Here's their pitch for that service.
Homeschool parents, are you looking for top-notch online classes that don't break the bank? Well, then the HSLDA Online Academy might be the answer.
We started in 2009 to bring high-quality AP courses to homeschooling families, and we now offer more than 40 online classes for middle school and high school students. These interactive and biblically based courses are specifically tailored to fit the homeschooling lifestyle and make your job as a home educator easier. Our ultimate goal is to provide courses which enable teacher-guided, parent-supported, student-led learning, all at an affordable price.
So how does it work? Students can take courses in English, math, science, history, and more. We also offer electives and AP courses. Our live interactive class sessions meet every week for 90 minutes. Live sessions keep students engaged and accountable and allow them to build relationships with teachers and classmates.
I keep going back to this. It's like an indoctrination into a cult.
You don't want a biblically based curriculum?
No,
come on.
I do not want a blaze to education. I was surprised they even mentioned science, though. Of course, even if you're growing up with a Christian upbringing, Christian schooling system, you probably do have to teach some science.
So it's funny that you say that, right?
Yeah. Okay. Because what kind of science are they teaching? That's what I'm curious about. What are they saying?
This is the part of the podcast where I'm going to reveal that I was homeschooled in 7th grade.
Oh my fucking God.
With a Christian curriculum.
No. Oh my, you had a biblically based education. Yes. Oh my fucking God. Can I take a guess? Wait,
I got the blazed education.
You got the blazed. Can I guess what kind of science they teach? What they consider science?
Yeah, so I was in 7th grade. Okay,
so I don't exactly know what you're going to teach a 7th grader science at that point. I'm not a teacher. But is it something that goes to the effect of basically reinforcing biblical worldviews, such as the world being 6,000 years old? So giving evidence, air quote, evidence, leading people to believe that the world is 6,000 years old. That's the science. It's not really science. It's pseudoscience.
That was a piece of it. I remember learning about the history of philosophy around natural sciences, and in specifically talking about Aristotle.
Yeah.
And Aristotle's whole deal was, he came up with some ideas that people would later build on. You know how Aristotle had the 4 elements?
I do, yeah.
Earth, wind, water, and fire?
Yeah.
And what I learned was basically, Aristotle? Yeah, that fucking dipshit. He thought there were 4 elements. What a loser. and then immediately would pivot to like how the Earth is only 6,000 years old. And it's like, what are we doing here?
So they're like shitting on like historical reference points, things that we might not have, like, we were ancient at that point. We couldn't know certain things.
And, like those 4 supposed elements, it turns out that those actually index pretty well to the 4 states of matter.
Yeah.
Which is real.
Yeah. And that's the thing is, it's like science. This is what Christians never really truly understand about science, or maybe it's intentional, that science we're not at the end of science ever.
Right.
We are never at a full understanding of science. So when right-wingers, conservatives are always like, oh, you say trust the science, but why did this fact change? And it's like, well, science inevitably is questioning itself. It's the scientific method. That's part of science, is learning more about the world. Nowhere in science has someone ever said this is 100% for sure the fact of the matter about this topic. There's very few things.
The reason that our understanding of these things changed is that our understanding of these things changed. Like,
exactly. They view that as a flaw. They think that's a flaw.
Exactly. And it's like, it becomes tautological in a sense after some point, because if you don't believe that the scientific method can lead to discoveries and build on past discoveries, and your entire purpose of the scientific method instead is to prove a supposition, not to prove a hypothesis, by the way, but to reinforce a supposition and throw out any and all evidence that does not confirm your prior, that is not the scientific method. That is ideological. But I guess what I will say about my year doing homeschooling, right, was we did it because some of my siblings wanted to do it. I was also not getting along with my peers very well in school that year because, again, it's 7th grade. Yeah. Like, who's going to have a good time in 7th grade? Nobody.
Famously a bad time to be a child.
But to the point of like the good things about homeschooling, because there are some, that was a year that we also got to do some immersion learning in a way that would not have been possible in traditional school, right? Yeah. So like one thing was that my brother was fucking obsessed with the American Revolution. Obsessed with it.
Okay.
And so we ended up going to New England and we did a tour of all of these historical sites from the Revolutionary War.
And that's a valuable thing. I mean, school trips, field trips are a very valuable part of a lot of education. And you can do a very tailored to your own sort of style.
Exactly.
If you have, if like a homeschool student has an interest like that actually is like a valuable thing.
And that is not something that obviously your standard school in Michigan would be able to do. You're not going to charter a bus and take a whole bunch of kids to Boston. That's just not happening.
Yeah.
And so like those were good things about it. And also I should note, my mom is a teacher. She has she has 2 degrees in education. So like she also knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
It's very different, though, I think, not to be like, well, I did it right. Because also by the end of that year, I was like, fuck this. I want to go back to school.
Yeah, because you want to like be around people your age.
Yes.
You want to see your friends.
Even the ones who I hated, which was to say most of them, because it was 8th grade.
But the being around other students, other kids is very valuable. Yeah. I mean, just people, I mean, I think this is going a little off topic, but the suburbanization of most of society makes people feeling isolated, makes people feel alone. That's not just an aspect of human life that we should prioritize as a child. We're a social species. It is so important to us to be around others like us or not like us. It is just important.
Both. And the counter-arg that the homeschooling advocates would give you is that, well, you get plenty of socialization, first of all, with your siblings, but also you get the socialization at like homeschooling co-ops, right?
Yeah,
where a whole bunch of, because that was another thing that I did, was I did the spelling bee. And rather than doing the spelling bee through my school, I did it through the homeschool co-op. And and I did marching band and a number of other extracurricular activities.
Well, not in homeschool, but marching band's fun. Sorry, this is just an aside. You said marching band. I'm like, oh, fuck yeah.
What'd you play?
I played snare drums. I played bass drum 1 year. I played quads 1 year. I played a little bit of everything.
Okay, so you were on the drum line. I was playing the mellophone and I fucking hated it.
That's not a fun instrument. It seems really hard to play.
It's even harder when you have braces, which I did. Because that tiny little mouthpiece, forget about it. I don't know what I was thinking. Anyway.
Wild.
They would argue that the socialization that you get from doing those things is sufficient. I would argue that that is not true.
I mean, the stereotype of the strange homeschooled person is a stereotype that exists for a reason.
Well,
because they don't properly get that socialization that, in some cases, not all, of course, not all,
right.
But a lot of people don't get that socialization that they might need.
Well, in Monica's book, she says that because she's normal, her kids turned out normal. And I'm not even joking. That's her argument.
That's crazy. That's not how anything works. I'm sorry to say. You can't just assume that that's how it will go.
I also just think more broadly, it's very interesting that they're okay with like standardized curricula and like formal group activities and all of these sorts of things as long as they're the ones doing it. To me, this seems to point to the real project of homeschooling having less to do with this magical bond that you get with your kids when you're teaching them and more to do with a subversion of existing schooling.
I mean, this goes back to just what we talked about with the Moms for Liberty episode. The problem they have with public education and education broadly is they're not the ones writing their curricula. They're not the ones in control of what the students are told and taught and learn and how they socialize and who they socialize with. That is what this is about. It's control of education. It's about information flow. Pretty much from top to bottom. In every part of American politics, the right's main project is information control.
Yes.
That's why you see them recently starting to ramp up attacks on Wikipedia more. Wikipedia excludes certain biased Christian with an underlying agenda organizations from being used as sources. So it is all about information control.
Yeah.
That is the ultimate right-wing project. Even broadly, it's aligned with natalism. It's aligned with everything. It's all about information.
And the information control thing, that absolute sphere of control, that is something that for homeschoolers, they want to treat this as an absolute right within the home. And so I want to talk now about the signature stances of the HSLDA. What do they stand for and what do they stand against, right?
Right.
So I'm just going to read this list to you and let me know how this hits you. It's another list.
I'm so giddy.
This is
I'm
a
so
list that
excited.
I made, by the way. I didn't pull this list from somewhere. I put this one together myself by hand.
Oh my God. You pulled yourself out by your bootstraps.
That's right. So signature stances of the HSLDA include they're supportive of religious carve-outs and exemptions to basically any education policy whatsoever. That includes vaccinations and stuff like that.
Of course, yeah.
They are opposed to any form of mandatory declaration or notice or letter of intent that you're homeschooling your kids rather than sending them to school. They are opposed to truancy laws. They are opposed to any form of mandatory health or wellness check by the state, including Child Protective Services.
Come on.
They are opposed to regulations on curriculum material for homeschoolers or educational and training requirements for homeschool teachers, such as, for instance, a mandatory GED or high school diploma. And they are also opposed to any form of testing or comparative learning assessment to see if students are basically keeping pace with their peers, including any form of standardized testing or portfolio review.
This is a very individualistic, very anti-government.
Yes.
This is off the grid type shit. They don't even want to function in a broader society with other people that are not like them. They're creating a parallel education system, a parallel society that only includes people like them. That is what all of this, I feel like, outlines perfectly.
And they trust people within that community to self-police.
Yes.
And so they will not allow the state to be involved in these matters.
The wellness checks is crazy. That says a lot.
Yeah. And this also, of course, raises another question, which is why? Like, why would you not support stuff like this? Because if you're doing your job responsibly, some of these things are, I guess, going to be a bit of a hassle. Like, you have to write a letter every year to your school district being like, I'm homeschooling my kid. That's kind of annoying. But like,
if you're doing it correctly, you should pass all of these with flying colors.
Exactly.
This should only just be a minor inconvenience that's annoying for like an hour.
Exactly. And what I will say is that we need to look at it once again from the perspective of ideology here. We have to remember what we talked about in our episode about James Dobson and Focus on the Family. That according to Focus on the Family's mission statement, and I think that this is also reflected by HSLDA, not explicitly, but I think the same ideology is there. There are those three core institutions which were ordained by God, right? The church, the family, the government. The government exists to maintain cultural equilibrium and provide a framework for social order. But it does not impose on the exclusive domain of the family. And because in this conception, schooling is part of the domain of the family, the government should not be allowed to touch it.
They value individual families above governments, above actual systems.
Yes. Well, exactly. I mean, because why from their perspective, all the government can do is interfere. All it can do is be an interloper. There is no positive outcome that can happen from government regulation of homeschooling in the same way that there can be no positive outcome from the government regulating the home and family life more broadly.
And let's be clear, they would be very happy if they took a hold of the federal government and could enforce this at a federal level.
Oh, yeah.
That would be a dream. It's not that they're opposed to that. They're just opposed to how it currently works.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you're 100% right. Like, if they could seize every lever of power of every government in the entire United States, they would immediately subject everybody to this.
Absolutely.
If you wanted to go to a public school that is supported by local tax base where you get to know other people, too fucking bad, kid. You're homeschooling or you're going to a Christian school. That's it.
I mean, we're seeing Trump already. And of course, this is mostly just big talk. You can't do it with an executive order. Trump wants to abolish the Department of Education.
Right.
I mean, that is a fever dream for these people. That's what they want. They don't want these systems to exist.
The other thing, too, of course, is that they assume that their members are going to be acting in good faith.
Yeah.
Always, right? Because this goes back to the thing from before. The government cannot know what is better for children than the children's own parents. Mm-hmm. This implies that every parent is going to be a good faith actor.
That's not always the case. Parents can be very abusive.
Exactly. And sometimes it is out of incompetence, but sometimes it's out of malevolence.
It is, yeah.
And there are horror stories about children who have disappeared out of schools and then have been discovered at home subject to horrifying abuse from their parents.
Yeah.
And that is why truancy laws exist. That is why,
thank God,
mandatory notice requirements exist in many states. To them, the possibility of some bad parents using homeschooling as a way to abuse their kids is a risk they are willing to take for the sake of granting themselves what they see as liberty.
They're always very willing to gamble on the collective good of everyone if they can get ahead.
Yeah. And they also, what they would say as well to what about abuse, right? Is they would say, well, we offer policies for that shit. Like, if you go to our website, you can see there are model policies for background checks and child protection that can be implemented by any homeschool family and any homeschooling co-op. We offer those resources.
Wonderful. That sounds wonderful, assuming the parent's not the one involved in some of the abuse. That sounds great.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it gets even more fucked up when you look at their position on Child Protective Services visits. Because generally speaking, their stated position is that CPS visits are a violation of Fourth Amendment rights.
The Fourth Amendment? Come on.
Unlawful search and seizure.
Oh, my. Come on. See, they'll always try to push the boundaries of every law possible. It sounds ridiculous, but this is probably a point they're going to keep trying to push for years and years to come.
Because, again, in their analysis of the law, if there is a policy that, let's say, requires an agent of the state to go and check in on a homeschooling family, let's say every year or twice a year or whatever, that is an unlawful search and or seizure under the Fourth Amendment.
That's so wild.
You say that, but, for a very long time, it was pretty ridiculous, the idea that the Second Amendment granted a private right to gun ownership.
Yeah, I guess a lot of these laws do and can change, and especially when they're pushed by right-wing activists.
Right.
And they're sadly very effective at what they can do. A lot of them have money. A lot of them have these group structures that are designed to hyper-focus on just these issues, on one issue.
And to pull it back to natalism for a second, one of the key arguments that natalists are always making is, it's my family, I should be able to run it however I want.
Yeah, and that's the homeschool ethos.
And I do think that in the future, you're going to be seeing this expansive reading of the Fourth Amendment used to prevent Child Protective Services and other similar agencies from checking in on families that are suspected of abuse. I think you're going to see that.
I hate that. I think you're 100% correct. I think the right is going to continue to keep pushing different families on the right to homeschool if possible, as has been the trend over the last couple of years. And I think they will continue to expand these different homeschooling groups to keep pushing on the Fourth Amendment, because I don't think conservatives really like the Fourth Amendment really at all.
No, they don't. They would rather see that not there, because it also prevents police from doing their jobs, in their opinion.
Yeah.
So we should talk very briefly about sort of pushback to this. The main organization that advocates for state regulation of homeschooling is a group called the CRHE. This is the Coalition for Responsible Home Education. This was founded by homeschool alumni, most of whom had bad experiences or mixed experiences.
Yeah, which I imagine there's a lot. I mean, I feel like everyone that I've ever talked to that knows someone or that was homeschooled, they generally didn't have a good experience. It sounds like you did have an okay experience.
I had an okay experience, but it was only for 1 year. And at the end of it, I was ready to go back to school.
Yeah. So if you were forced to stay in there longer, it could have probably turned out a lot worse.
I think so.
Yeah.
So one thing that I do think is kind of funny about CRHE is that their website is so clearly modeled after the HSLDA website. They have most of the same pages, but it's just a bizarro version. Yeah. I've got 2 screenshots here, and on the left is a page from the HSLDA, and on the right is a page from the CRHE. Both of these are maps of like homeschool laws and policies, and they're the same map except that the colors are inverted. So like
it's the exact same. There's maybe 1 or 2 states that are like slightly different, but it is a reverse map. It's like color, what do you call that? Like a color shift.
Yeah, because HSLDA is like, oh, the state of New York and Pennsylvania are bad. And then the CRHE website is like, the state of New York and Pennsylvania are good.
I like that it's a direct call it. It's like a direct shots fired situation
it's
with
great.
them. Yeah.
I mean, this is also a very homeschool brain thing to do, to like completely replicate an existing structure, but like make the good version of it.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome.
Sorry if there are any CRHE fans listening, but
famously a group that everyone knows of and has a lot of active fans of. Yeah.
I mean, with our show,
it's a good group.
With our show,
it's probably high at least. Yeah.
I will say
we're going to get 10 emails saying, "How dare you?"
I will say, I think CRHE, their platform is sort of the moderate option. They stand for some reform. They offer something called the Bill of Rights for Homeschooled Children, and that basically just states that all homeschoolers should have the right to an education that grants them autonomy, academic freedom, and access to the broader world outside of their homes. Mm-hmm. And the main thing that they are currently pressing for is a model bill. They are hoping that like state legislatures will pick this up and pass this in their respective state houses. Okay. It's called the Make Homeschool Safe Act. And you'll notice that the key points of this act are in direct opposition to everything that we just talked about. These are things that would forego or nullify most of the things that HSLDA is fighting for.
And all of those things put children in direct harm. The things that you read off before from the HSLDA are harmful to students.
Or at least potentially harmful, yes.
But the potential factor is something that, why would we risk that? Why is that something that we're willing to gamble on? We shouldn't.
And so all of these proposed reforms are, I think, pretty like baseline sensible things that are hard to argue against. For instance, imposing mandatory notice assessment and curriculum requirements on homeschooling, require teachers to have either a high school diploma or a GED, ban convicted child abusers from homeschooling their children. That one seems completely uncontroversial to me, but again...
Apparently not for some of these groups.
Well, because what if the woke state frames you, June?
Yeah, of course. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
I forgot about that. What happens when they make Christianity illegal and categorize it as child abuse?
And we start hunting you in the streets.
That's right.
Yeah. I forgot about that bill that we're trying to pass. The Hunt Christians in the Streets Act.
It's a classic act. They want to allow homeschool students to participate in classes and sports at local public schools, and they want to require homeschool students to receive the same standard schedule of immunizations that everybody else gets. And
should be uncontroversial.
I think so. And there has not yet been a comprehensive bill modeled on this. introduced in any state legislature, but there are components of this legislation in place in states like New York and Pennsylvania, as we just
and that's why they're green. That's why they're the good states. Yeah.
Exactly. HSLDA hates these guys for reasons that we've kind of already mentioned. I don't think I've got a whole quote here. There's a page where they talk about how bad it is.
Never acknowledge the haters. That's the first mistake.
Yeah. And I think this also connects back to Moms for Liberty in a really interesting way, because like their whole position, HSLDA, is you need to honor my liberty to do whatever the fuck I want to my kids.
Yeah. Absolutely. No, they're sister, not directly. They probably don't reference each other in any way, but they function to do the same thing.
Yes, their purposes are at unity with each other, I would say.
Yeah.
From slightly different angles, but
they all function to whittle away public education more broadly, right, and recreate what education means to the Christian conservative movement.
Right.
Their goal is to reshape education for their own families and for everyone else, if possible.
Exactly. And I wanted finally to just pull this back to the broader topic, the topic of our show, natalism. The idea that people should be having as many kids as possible, right? Because this, to me, putting this episode together kind of felt like I was seeing all of the puzzle pieces from previous episodes and then like putting them together. You know?
It was the Avengers of ill-conceived. We got back all the classics. We got all the heroes back. Yeah, I was thinking about that throughout this entire episode. I was like, we talked about this episode. It all calls back. Yeah.
And just to reference a few of those explicitly, right? Our Quiverful episode, we talked about how Christian natalists are using homeschooling to advance the broader project of Christian nationalism and Christian nationalist governance. That you've got these big families, they've all got a bunch of kids. The reason that they homeschool is that they want their children to continue to carry forward their values and then take those values and use them to reshape the state.
Yeah.
It connects to abstinence-only sex education. Natalists don't like comprehensive sex education. We talked about this. The reason is that when you prioritize contraception, it lowers the birth rate.
And of course, you have to have as many children as possible.
Exactly. And when you homeschool, you don't have to give any sex ed at all if you don't want to. And if you do,
you have that control.
If you do, it's definitely going to be one wife for your life, right?
Yes.
Purity balls and trad wives. We talked about this as well, right? Natalists see the primary role of women as child bearers and child rearers. They make this beautiful, blissful domestic environment. And in homeschooling, you can have your kids practice those behaviors day after day after day, especially if you have a bunch of kids.
Yeah, no, you can prepare them to be a homemaker. You can give them the base level of education they might need to be like a functioning adult. But their goal is probably not for them to become like a law professor at a university in New York. That's probably not what they're priming their kids to do.
And to the point of priming, you know, you can have as much of their education be about sewing and baking as you want. And I'm not saying sewing and baking are bad. I like doing both. But you know what I mean? Like
there's some implications behind that being a priority while homeschooling.
Exactly. And then finally, Moms for Liberty, Project 2025. We've talked about this as well, how dismantling public schools through school choice, which is what they're trying to do, destroys this integrative effect of mass education, leaves everybody more atomized, leaves everybody less informed, leaves everybody easier to manipulate and control, and will create an entire generation of people, or at least they hope, and I'm not convinced this is true, but they hope that it will create a generation of people who will do nothing but carry on the ideological project of their ancestors.
And I think we've spent a lot of this show, I'm actually realizing, we've spent a lot of time talking about education.
Yeah.
Because that is actually a very important part of this pipeline that they're trying to implement behind this white nationalist ideology. They think that they can control information flow, which will in turn create a type of populace that is in line more with their worldview and their politics long term.
And conversely to that, if the purpose of education is to help people understand the world around them, then somebody who is educated in that mindset will never stop asking questions. And that is something that they cannot abide. They cannot abide that process of constantly asking questions because you will end up digging deeper and you will discover things about this ideology that don't make sense. that aren't all the way thought through, that are half-baked, that are based on conventional wisdom or passed down assumptions, and to interrogate it at that level is something that they themselves cannot tolerate. So to have it interrogated by their own kids,
that would be betrayal.
Absolutely.
Hey, Josh.
What?
So at the top of the episode, I was like, hey, I have very strong opinions about this topic. I don't necessarily know everything behind it, but I just got to say, thank you for giving me everything I need to just actually reinforce that worldview I had of homeschooling's not great overall.
I don't like it. I think I appreciate the work that CRHE is doing in trying to get these sort of common sense reforms in place that I think will benefit children.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, I do think that in most cases, homeschooling still does have a corrosive effect on education and on the body politic more broadly.
Totally agree.
So are you going to go out and own some people with facts and logic then?
Oh, I'm going to go own some people. But more importantly, I think it's very important that, if people are going to homeschool, it's very important to introduce their kids to Mao as early as possible.
You're goddamn right.
That's my main takeaway, is if you're going to do it, at least give them the Little Red Book. Come on.
So true. Well, I'm Josh.
I'm June.
And we'll see you next week. Bye.
See ya.